Welcome, everybody. Bob Stelton here from the Bob Gross and Tom Show. I think you know who this is. Recognize this face. Funniest man in America right here. The great Jim Norton, who's in town, working his magic at the Parlor tonight and tomorrow night. Pleasure to have you back in the room, man.
Thank you. I don't handle compliments well. So whenever somebody says something good about me, I just kind of panic. And then, you know what I mean? Expect nothing. That's what I kind of like, when people just kind of, this guy's mediocre, and then if I look good, I look good, and if I suck, it's like, well, we kind of expected you to have something.
We'll go out and see if he bombs. He may not. It's a 50-50 proposition. But then I must make you uncomfortable all the time, because every time I bring you on, I tell you you're the funniest guy in America, man.
Thank you very much. I didn't remember that. I think I blocked it out like a childhood incident, but I appreciate you saying that. It's very nice of you.
Well, I want to hit some of the stuff that's going on in the world of MMA, because you do your UFC Unfiltered podcast with Matt Serra, which is fantastic.
Thank you.
Want to talk about the show, though, because I've discussed this with you before. I mean, you're always busy. You're doing movies, you do a radio show, you're on Power, you do, was it?
Well, I was on Power.
Father Callahan?
Yeah, they killed me.
Yeah, you were on there, but you were a number of episodes.
Yeah,
so how do you write? How do you write for your stand-up gig? Because
I just go on. I go on stage and I try. We interviewed David Cross the other day, and he does the same thing I do, which is just kind of go on and you just kind of talk through something and see where it goes. That's what I do at the Comedy Cellar. You're just kind of exploring it. I'm not good at sitting and writing. I wish I should be better at that, because it's part of my job. But I'm lazy, so I just kind of go on and try ideas.
So you'll be walking around thinking, this will be funny, I'm going to try it tonight.
Yeah, and plus doing radio every day, you're talking about stuff, whether it's, you know, the Saudi embassy incident or Stormy Daniels or whatever. You're always discussing it, so your mind is always kind of thinking of it. So when you walk on stage, you've already been thinking of it. You
know, you had some really funny tweets on the Saudi thing, which is interesting. You're able to make light or put some humor into some very serious things that can be dark and ugly. Are there ever things you go, I'm not going to touch that? Is there anything that's off limits to you?
No, but you got to be careful where you put the joke. Like, because a friend of mine was good friends with this guy, Khashoggi. I never met him, but so I'm not going to make fun of the guy being dead. So you make fun of the Saudi explanation. It all depends on where your emphasis is, what you're making fun of, you know?
Right.
Right. You know, but if there's like a child kidnapping, it's kind of hard to find a great humor angle on that. You know what I mean? You got to be careful with what you... Especially this day and age where everyone is looking to get everyone else.
Right. The other part of your comedy to me that truly stands out is you're about as self-deprecating as anybody I see up there. And it feels like there's not a part of you that you wouldn't expand on or expose to the audience.
I think you were going to say put a bullet through. You'd be right there too.
But are there things in your life you're like, yeah, I'm not going to bring this up? I mean, is there anything you just keep to you, or is it all there for public consumption?
Certain things about other people. Like if it's going to compromise somebody else's privacy, I'm very, very careful with that. My own stuff I don't care about, but if it's going to compromise something somebody else has told me or something somebody else doesn't want out there, then I'm a little bit more careful.
But stuff about you.
Yeah, they can know all of it. None of it's unique. Someone once told me if it's got a name, someone's done it. There's nothing in my life that's so crazy. You know what I mean? It's just, it's all pretty bland, actually.
Yeah. Wow. I don't know.
Yeah, maybe not.
Yeah. Not bland at all, really. So, is this it feels like your presence in film, whether it's TV shows or movies, things like that, is growing and getting bigger. Is that the goal, or is stand-up always going to be? You see, people have to make a choice. It feels like at some point, whether they're going to be able to tour and keep doing this, or if they're going to make that full-time commitment to their film career. It feels like you're getting close to that point.
Never happened. You know, it's funny. They always choose films because it's nice to be treated nicely in a trailer and have like you know, someone go and grab your breakfast. Or do I want to stand in front of people who are going to stare at me and heckle and talk? I'd rather be treated like a king in a trailer. But you know, I have a little part in Scorsese's new film. I play a young Don Rickles in The Irishman. Unless they cut me out, I don't know. But I enjoy doing it. But it's never going to be like my real career. It's always going to be stand-up and radio.
Who have you worked with that's intimidated you? Because I saw you do something with De Niro.
Yeah, he was in the scene I did too for this.
Oh, he was in this too?
Yeah, him and Pesci were in the scene I did. Pesci was a little nerve-wracking because I had met De Niro. I'd done a couple things with before. Scorsese I had a meeting with in his office to play this part. So I had talked to him and he's very relaxed. Pesci was scary though because he heckled me as Rickles. It was so weird. We were in some break and he yelled something and I was like, And I almost did a Goodfellas reference that would have bombed because it was the wrong reference. But I
would have been even better.
I panicked, but I didn't. Thank God. There's times in life when you shut up and it's really valuable. He was a little scary, but afterwards he was great.
And that's your biggest strength, is your ability to, with a quick quip. I mean, Your stand-up, I think, is brilliant. I've told you this, but
Thank you.
I think your ability in just a random conversation to spit out a one-liner immediately is unlike anybody else I've heard.
Thank you. I also have the same ability to bomb immediately, like to fire out a horrible, and I almost did in that moment. I'll never forget that. Because what happened was I was doing Rickles jokes that they had written, because that's what Rickles did the night of this Gallo murder, was the guy went and saw, I think it was Bobby Gallo, went and saw Rickles. I could be misquoting who the guy was. But it was a true story that they're telling, so the jokes were pre-written. And then when they said it was time for the turnaround of the camera, and it was on De Niro and Pesci, Scorsese said to me, Mr. De Niro has requested that you just do your regular act, because he wants to hear something that he hasn't heard before, so he wants to laugh at something spontaneous. You know, because he's like one of those method guys that just wants it all to be real.
Right.
So when the camera is on De Niro and Pesci, if he's laughing at all, it's from my actual material, because I'm not doing Rickles stuff. And it was so weird because the camera was on my right, so I'm standing there looking at De Niro and Pesci, doing my act, and then somebody would do like this, and I had to shut up so they could do their dialogue together, and then I had to pick back up. It was a very surreal experience to watch those guys laughing at my stuff. And like look just dead, just staring at them from 30 feet away. Do
you ever just step back and go, holy hell, I just made Robert De Niro laugh?
I walk in.
It's Robert De Niro.
Yeah. Well, I made him. He liked me because I did something with him on the film The Comedian, which a lot of people didn't like, but I got to sit with him one-on-one and just talk about stand-up. And he liked the fact that I was, I guess, comfortable talking about that with him, because he's such a scary guy, because he is who he is, that everyone is like reverential around him. But he had a beard for something else he was doing, and he walked in that morning without a beard, and I'm like, wow, you're much more and he really laughed and enjoyed that. But if it was anything else other than comedy, I would have been petrified. But because I'm like a comic for 25 years, I'm okay discussing that with even a guy like that.
Right.
So he probably thinks like, wow, this guy's confident. He has no idea that I'm just a coward who was talking about the one thing I'm okay talking about.
Didn't you have him spank you?
Oh, yeah, my special.
Your special.
Oh, yeah. In the special, the opening, because I did that first thing, I got it, he agreed to do the second thing. But I didn't put the bare bottom spanking in there. I left that out. That was not in the script, because I didn't want him or his people to see that and get freaked out. So the day before we're going to shoot, they're like, hey, Bob wants to talk to you. So we talked on the phone, and there's one point where he calls me, I forget what he calls me, a little weasel or a worm. And he goes, that's a little mean. I want people to know I like you. I'm like, yeah, we don't have to do it. And he wound up improvising and calling me a little slug. And I'm like, that was meaner than anything I wrote. But when he was going to spank me, I brought a brush. I'm like, there's no way he's going to want to spank me. So as a joke, I'm like, hey, I bought a brush so you don't have to touch my bare ass. He goes, whatever, I don't care. So when it was time for that moment, I laid over his lap physically, and I said, look, I'll try not to your leg. And that really made him laugh. And he did 3 takes of spanking me, and then he suggested, why don't we do one where I'm standing? And that was the one we wound up using. His instincts were really good. It was surprising. De Niro has good on-camera instincts, but he was right. Like he and Gervais did that for me. Like he did Gervais, Louis, and De Niro were all the 3 guys in the opening of that, and every one of them had little tweaks which made it better. Like they really did. Like Louis was like, just keep talking and I'll shut the door. And Gervais had a couple of ideas. I had a whole script thing for Gervais. We used 20% of what I wrote, 80% of what he did, because he was just such a funny improver. Right. You know, so whenever you write something, you got to be willing to let guys who are good at what they do it.
Yeah, it turned out well. It was really funny.
I'll never top that.
It was
I'll
good.
never top, unless I can get like Pacino to me. There's nothing I'm going to do that's going to top De Niro spanking me.
Well, you had, no, I always blank on his name, the guy from The Wire.
Oh, Michael K. Williams.
Yes, your other special where you had that routine with him, which was really,
where
really
my
good.
hands were tied, he was behind me, and my bare bottom was showing, yeah. Well, he played Omar, a gay gangster, and you see me like gagged, and all of a sudden when his face came into camera and he kissed the back of my head, I knew the audience would laugh because they understood how much, like every one of my openings, it's somebody that means something to me a lot. Right. I love Michael K. Williams. That's my favorite character ever, is Omar on The Wire. Obviously, I love De Niro, and Louis is a very close friend, and Ricky Gervais is a friend. And the first one, Please Be Offended, Ozzy introduced me from his toilet. Yeah. And that was a goal of mine. I'm like, I want Ozzy Osbourne to say, Mr. Jim effing Norton. I want him to do that from his toilet. And Sharon made it happen, and he was sitting on his bowl. And at one point, he had to drop his pants, and I forgot who I was dealing with. I'm like, do you want me to leave the room? And he goes, I don't get it. He just dropped his pants. And there's a point where I'm looking at Ozzy's. This is the greatest thing I've ever. But I'm like, oh yeah, this is Ozzy Osbourne. He doesn't care if I see him half naked.
That's got to be another surreal moment, though, because that's somebody you've idolized your whole life.
Yeah, I love Ozzy. He's my favorite person.
And now he knows you. Now he's a friend, I assume. And
he does. I went and saw them in Brooklyn. He's doing a solo tour. And I was talking to Sharon for a while. And I'm like, okay, I want to go back and say hello, but should I do it before or after? And then she comes back in 5 minutes. She goes, okay, they're coming to get you. And I walk into the green room, and it's just him and his assistant. We sit and we talk for a while. It's a very surreal thing. Because you don't fanboy. I don't take pictures at this point. You know, we talk about normally.
You don't do that anymore?
Not with him. I mean, normally he'll say to me like, "Oh, you kept the weight off," and we'll talk about that, and then we talk about sleeping because he's a crap sleeper and I'm a crap sleeper, and we just talk about weird, bizarre, normal stuff.
Because I remember back to a video I'd watched where you brought in gifts for him.
18 pounds of books.
Books, and he left them there.
Opie filmed it. It's one of my favorite moments with Opie because he's filming, and he saw the pile of books. And he's laughing, and he knows he has this moment. I'm talking, and Ozzy has left, and there's a pile of books this big on the table. And Opie's stutter, like trying to time it, was so funny because then when he finally delivers the reveal, which is that Ozzy has left my books on.
The gifts you got him for his birthday.
18 pounds of books sitting there forgotten by Ozzy Osbourne. And then his assistant came back in, and we're like, oh, he forgot his cup. And then he came back in, and he got his cup, and he left.
He left the books.
He left the books.
They were like Beatles books.
They were Beatles, 18 pounds. He's a big Beatles fan. And what a disgusting day that was for me. Humiliating.
Oh, God, that was such a good video. Hey, I want to hit some MMA with you before we let you get out of here, because again, you do the UFC Unfiltered podcast with Matt Serra, which is great. He's such a good dude.
He's a character.
By the way, have you started training? Last time we talked, we talked about you getting into it and what a great workout it is. I've been doing it for 10 years.
Oh, you have?
Yeah. So it's something I love. Obviously, you're working with one of the greats. I mean, Matt Serra's a high-level black belt. You've got such a great, Henzo. You've got such a great opportunity.
I know. It's because I'm always tired. I have sleep apnea, so I'm always like
I've got it as well.
Stoned. Yeah, it's horrible.
Yes.
So I'm always tired. But Henzo, I know, has invited me down. Jamie English, who trains kickboxing at Henzo's place. Jimmy Rivera contacted me because he has a place that's very close to where I live, Tiger Schulman. He said, come by my gym, man. And we've texted, and I just haven't done it. I really do need to. Caitlin Chukagan wanted to. She's like, I want to be there for your first lesson. And it's not that I'm afraid to do it, because I know I'll love it. It's just I'm so tired all the time. I'm like, I got to just do. Once I do what I know, I'll get it.
You'll love it. You'll love it. And again, you've got the access to the best, so that's awesome. It's
really stupid of me. I'm a stupid person. I've also had access to condoms, and I've never used them. So.
Give me your thought on it. I know you've talked about this on the podcast and been asked about the whole Conor McGregor-Khabib thing that went on. Did you point to one person more than the other? I mean, listen, I love both guys. Khabib started that thing by hopping into the audience. To me, there's no two ways around it. And the whole nonsense about, well, where he comes from, he doesn't take that well, he doesn't understand. I'm like, this is not his first fight in America. This is not his first fight in the UFC. That's nonsense about, you handle your business in the cage. That's where the payback is. That started because of what he did. It doesn't. It seems pretty black and white to me.
It was. Conor was really wrong for what he did. And here's the most frustrating part: is that in some interviews I'll say Habib, and some I say Khabib. Make up your mind, Jim. Because I know it's Habib, but I just can't. It just doesn't roll off my brain like that. But yeah, he was wrong to jump over the fence. I get why you did it. But like now you got fans there, and you're putting Dana White and the UFC and the fans at risk of a riot.
Were you there?
No, I was not.
Okay.
I forget where I was. I was on the road somewhere and I watched it. You just can't do it. I get why he hates Conor. That's fine. Conor taunts you. Maybe it's over the line. Maybe it's not. But he got Jose Aldo to run in 13 seconds with his face showing. He was so angry, and he did a very un-Jose-like thing, and Conor knocked him out. He has the ability to frustrate you so much that you make a mistake.
Yeah, and he's also selling the fight. It's part of, and Habib is not a guy who's selling the fight. He doesn't speak. He's not a guy who loves doing media. You got to sell the fight. These guys have back end on the pay-per-view.
Well, that's why I didn't say. I mean, every other fight you have Mayweather-McGregor. In this one you had McGregor-Khabib, because nobody knows who Nurmagomedov is.
Exactly.
I mean, fight fans do, but nobody outside of that world.
Right.
And it's not a disrespect to him. What is he, 27-0 now? I mean, he's one of the great fighters of all time. But when it comes to stuff like that, you beat him, you made him tap. And we talked about this on the podcast the other day. it seemed like he was trying to break his jaw.
Yeah,
he was doing
it took him a second to let go.
And he was holding his face as opposed to his neck.
Yeah.
Like he wanted to crack his jaw.
Yeah, and that's where the payback happened for everything he said. Yeah. That's where it should end. And I didn't hear Matt's take on it. I don't know if he assigned blame to one more than...
He went too far! I love Matt Serra is such an animal. But he doesn't... he took Khabib's side, like he knows he was wrong, but he's like, dude, Jimmy went over the line, and I understand that. Like these fighters have this mentality of it's honor, and I know that technically that's right, but my point was you can't jump like you tapped him, and if you want to beat him up in the back, fight him in the back. I'm only saying it was wrong because heat of the moment or not, you're putting people sitting right around the cage at risk. You're putting fans at risk. Just the way Conor did something despicable and threw that stuff through the bus window.
Right.
I was 100% against him for that. By the way, I'm not even a huge Conor fan. This is the first time I've actually taken Conor to win. Of course, he loses, because he tends to beat up people I like. Like I like Eddie Alvarez. I love Jose Aldo. And Conor beat both of them. So I'm like, I'm going to take Conor because I think that he's going to get in Khabib's head and he's going to run in and get caught because, Michael Johnson caught him a few times and Iaquinta caught him. And, of course, what happens, it goes to the fourth round. Like, I literally have zero ability to pick fights.
I think Conor's time out of the cage hurt him because he's a guy who's got some of the best timing and he's about as accurate as anybody I've ever seen. And that was all off. He was short on every big left hand he threw. Everything was a little short. It just looked like maybe the 2 years out of the cage.
And then to have to come back and deal with that savage. I mean, of all the people you don't want to deal with after a 2-year layoff. Watching Khabib is frustrating because it's like a schoolyard beatdown. He puts you in the corner and he mushes you and he ties your legs up with his legs and he just pounds on you. And that's how I would get beaten up. Like basically when I watch him beating people up, I'm like, they're professionals and that's what he would do to me.
Yeah.
They're not doing any better than I would do.
That's how I'd go out.
Yeah. Like literally, but then again, you look at Conor and Jose Aldo. Jose Aldo only lasted 12 seconds longer than I would have.
Yeah. Now, we saw first, or we're seeing it first, I guess. I don't know if it's actually official, but a trade in the world of MMA, which I think is so odd. And I love Demetrius. It's Demetrius for Ben Askren.
Oh yeah, Eddie Alvarez went over to Singapore.
Yeah. So they're talking about, and I love Demetrius is from here. I've talked to him a million times. He's a friend. He's such a good dude.
Very nice guy.
And he's arguably maybe the greatest to ever do it. And the problem is he doesn't draw. And I understand he's just not a pay-per-view draw, and I get why the UFC would say, okay, that's fine. But it feels like a step down for him, with all due respect to one. But what do you think of that? The idea of a trade in MMA is so weird.
It's crazy. I thought he made a terrible mistake when he did not fight TJ. When he fought Henry Cejudo as his next fight. And again, no disrespect to Cejudo.
He won that fight, by the way. I'm sorry. I think Demetrius won.
Yeah, I thought he won too. I don't remember. I remember watching the decision and thinking that DJ kind of got it. He clapped after Cejudo got the decision. He's
good dude.
But I thought he made a terrible mistake not taking TJ Dillashaw because he didn't take him when he fought Ray Borg either. Like he wanted that 10th fight in a row, the 10th defense in a row. Yeah. And I thought he should have taken that because it was a big money fight, and he was complaining that he wasn't getting these big things. It was like, well, then you got to take that fight. But look, maybe a change of scenery will be good for him. I don't know. Some guys do well when they leave the UFC. Some guys don't. I was thinking of Eddie went over to, what's it called?
Yeah, that's the same place that Demetrius is going. Yeah, I think it's based out of there.
Okay, based out of Singapore. And I love Eddie. But before that, we had interviewed Dana, and he had indicated that he thought that Eddie might go somewhere. And he's like, hey, it's probably his last contract. No hard feelings. He's great,
Yeah.
So I hope both of those guys do well. It's just, the UFC is not the only game in town. I mean, you have other, which is great because when the UFC is, look, let's be honest, they get you at your prime. Yep. You don't want to see guys having no career when they want to fight. But then again, a guy like Chuck who's fighting Tito Ortiz for a third time, I like both of those guys. And I think you don't want to see those guys get hurt.
Well, you just hit on what I wanted to ask you about, is watching some of the guys you grew up watching, some of the greats of the sport.
Yeah.
Bellator does a good job of marketing those things. Sure. They put Fedor in there. They put in, obviously Chael and guys that are, Frank Mir, guys that are past their prime. But there is an audience there.
They're still good, yeah.
I'm sort of conflicted because I've seen you have seen these guys at their prime, and I'm like, God, do I want to see a diminished version of these guys fighting each other? Frank Shamrock and Kimbo Slice and things like that. I'm conflicted. How do you feel about those fights? Do you like them?
The same way. Again, Chuck's a buddy of mine, and you hate to see it, and so's Chael. And seeing, boy, Fedor really caught him good, too. Fedor still throws hard.
So funny people thought that was a setup.
Nah.
It's so ridiculous.
Chael's that's not a setup.
It's so ridiculous.
If Fedor catches you, he's still a great heavyweight. I don't think he would fare as well in the UFC because I don't think Fedor is doing that against Daniel Cormier. I don't think Fedor. I mean, Henderson beat him when he went up in weight. He's still a great fighter. But he caught Chael. He caught him, and that was it. I mean, Chael's not taking it. They don't need him to take a dive. I mean, Fedor hits still pretty hard.
Yeah. Is there anybody you want to bring in studio? Because one of the funny things you did a lot was you guys would have fighters come in, and then you would have them do something. You had John Jones kick you. You had Fedor. Didn't Fedor choke you?
Fedor put me in an arm lock. He also choked me. We had him on a couple of times. Brock Lesnar put me in a heel hook, which hurt. John Jones hurt me the worst, though. He had choked me a few times. And the one time he did a knee thing, he gave me a shin to my leg, and I almost threw up. It hurt so bad, my body went into shock. Which, by the way, that's why I don't train at Henzo's, because I'm such a little weasel. I take one kick and my body's like fight or flight, vomit, and I almost passed out. I almost threw up. It was horrible. Cain Velasquez choked me. BJ was the first one to do it. He put me in an armbar,
right?
Yeah. So I have Anderson Silva kicked me. We stopped doing that after a while. But
a liability issue or what?
It just got to be like we had done it. What else were they going to do?
Okay.
There's only so many things you're going to do. What am I going to do? Oh, Johnny Hendricks. I mean, there's only so many things you can do.
So the kick was the worst, though. The John Jones kick.
The John Jones kick to the thigh, the upper thigh, was the worst. Yeah, and you wouldn't think it was. Although Lesnar's heel hook hurt as well, but I think Jones was in fight week, and you don't want those guys in fight week because they're all a little ornery. They're cutting weight.
Yep.
Bad timing.
Again, Jim Norton, the greatest comedian in the history of comedy, is out there today. He's out there at the Parlor tonight, 2 shows tonight, 2 shows tomorrow as well. So if there are tickets left, get out there and watch him. You're not going to regret it. Love having you in, man. Thanks so much for coming in.
Thanks, brother. Appreciate it.